So, on the latest episode of the PCT podcast, we are delighted to welcome current head of Girls Academy at Nottingham Forest, Dave Long. Good morning, Dave.
Good,
Firstly,
Martin.
to say thank you, mate, for your giving up time of your day and then coming to speak to us on the podcast. How are you keeping?
Yeah, very well, thank you. How's yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. Busy as always, which is good. Keeps us alive, I think. So,
Yeah,
yeah, it's not too bad, mate. The Listen, the reason for the recording the podcast is just before we get into the crux of your career to date and obviously how you found football as an industry and in your career and that, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your current role?
yeah. Okay, so currently the head of the Girls Academy at Nottingham Forest, overseeing a programme with roughly about 100 girls in it currently, and then line managing one part-time member of staff that we're looking as the programme grows may grow to the number of sort of part-time staff that we have, and roughly about 12 casual members of staff as well, which include strength and conditioning, physiotherapy, and obviously on the pitch coaches as well.
So it sounds like you will be kept busy on a
Absolutely.
day-to-day basis.
Yeah,
Um,
very much so.
which sort of leads me on, like, just can you give us a little insight into before we get into the crux of your career, a little bit of your day-to-day workings and what your average day probably looks like?
Yeah, so it's a little bit, it's, as you know, working in football, it can be a little bit reactive. So in an ideal world, you want to be really strategic with everything you do and pre-plan and forward planning, but you'll get curveballs every single day, something by either the club or by a parent or a player need. So it's there's quite a lot of reactiveness, and that's something I perhaps need to still relatively new into the role and still relatively new into sort of any kind of managerial role that I perhaps need to get better at managing. But yeah, a lot of the day is liaising with parents, managing the workforce. There's elements of reporting to the club, so they'll want updates on player development or staff development or financial. So there'll be budgetary reporting that I'll have to do as well. And then a lot of I always set aside a portion of time is for research. So we are constantly trying to look at what the most optimal way of developing high potential players is in our program. So we'll look at what other clubs are doing, what other countries are doing, what other sports are doing, what our colleagues over at the Boys Academy are doing, and how they do it. So yeah, there's quite a lot of the time is also where we can is spent looking at research around player development.
100 questions have just popped into my head there, but
Mm.
one I want to sort of touch on straight away is football has historically always been a sort of cloak and daggers type thing. So when you reach out to other clubs and say how are you doing things, they've not always been as receptive. But I think obviously that's changed hugely over the past few years. How receptive are other clubs of you when you make that contact and say, listen, we're looking to better ourselves. Can you give us an insight?
They've been really good, to be fair. They've been excellent. So I've been to recently been to Leicester City, who obviously in the WSL. Been to Man City about 2 weeks ago. Obviously we work alongside, and I used to be at the Boys Academy myself. So you know we've got strong relationships in there, as you'd expect, being the same club. Spoke to other sports as well. So we're location wise, we're lucky because we've got Trent Bridge Cricket across the road. So we've had meetings with their girls pathway, and also Forest now have a netball team as well,
Oh, right.
which is quite interesting to have another sport within your club, what's traditionally been a football club, and to learn how their pathways work and how their player development structures are as well. So yeah, answer to your question is I found other clubs really receptive, and we will be reciprocal to that as well. That if clubs want to, obviously, you know, clubs there's certain information that you can't disclose, but generally if it's you know to help clubs as they're looking to improve their, as I say, their development pathways, etc., then yeah, we'd be happy to assist with that as well.
Yeah, because to be fair, obviously being in the women's game recently, Nottingham Forest have come out and put a huge statement in terms of supporting the growth of the women and girls games, and with all league games for the first team being at the City Ground. How important is that for the staff and people like yourself as head of Girls Academy? A statement is as huge as that is made.
I think it's really important for us. So it's really easy now. In previous to myself coming into the role, the Forest Girls section, it'd been previously an RTC back when the regional talent clubs. It hadn't had RTC status since pre-COVID. So there'd been a number of years where there'd been a grassroots club and weren't a part of the club. So interestingly as well, when I first started, and then my boss started as well, the head of women and girls, the women's section was actually part of the commercial department in the club, so it wasn't actually part of the football department. So coming under the football department's been really important, because obviously we share all the resources and knowledge that come with being part of the football department. And it's meant that the players feel very much a part of the club now, whereas previously, say, running as a grassroots club in a remote venue, so the girls, and we still are, but so we're 6 miles outside of Nottingham where we train and play our matches. So we are a little distance away, but what we've actively tried to do, and the club have been really receptive to, so any inductions that we do, any player feedback meetings that we have, any meetings that we have to have with players are all done at the City Ground. So we'll use the facilities here so they feel part of the club and feel part of that elite environment. So it's being a part of the club is really important. And then the use of the City Ground for the senior team, it is, again, it's just a great statement of intent. So again, when we're looking to recruit young talent, we can point to the club and how serious they're taking the women's game at Nottingham Forest as a recruitment tool for us to try and encourage high potential young players to come to us, as opposed to some of our rivals.
Again, it's a huge statement, and I think it gives that not awareness. That's probably not the right word, but if they can see it, they can be it. And with the way that social media is now, I think Nottingham Forest are excellent in terms of their social media outputs, and seeing a lot of the women and girls present, almost, it gives them that something to aspire to.
And that's, again, and I'm not involved with all of these levels, but just to show sort of the club's commitment is obviously the media team are the same as do the men, so they're just the media team are the same. So the sort of the sharing of and use of resources across the club that include the women is really important. It means that all the social media posts look the same. So when Forest do just little things like when they do goal of the month, it also includes goals from the women's senior team as well. So you'll get goals from Gibbs White or Hudson Odoi, along with goals from Nat Johnson or Mel Johnson, or so it's really important. Yeah.
No, that's incredible. I think one of the questions I'd like to sort of delve into is, when you mentioned that you're relatively new in terms of the role. When you step into a role like this and you're managing people, or what's in the forefront of your thoughts in terms of making an impact without upsetting people or changing things too drastically? Is that a thought process, or?
Yeah, it was. You sort of learn as you go along, don't you? And so when I first came in, I wanted to make drastic changes. I wanted to make a sort of a statement and impact coming into the role. You sort of do, because you sort of full of enthusiasm, and you want to make it for a positive reason. So it's not to upset people, or you want to make a bigger positive impact as you possibly can, and you want to do it all at once. Now, when we talk about drastic change, it actually, when I came in, it was a period of drastic change for the club in general. So when I came into the role heading up the Girls Academy, there was a new head of women and girls. So Amber came into post, she was just a little bit before me. I came in as head of Girls Academy. As I say, the women's moved from the commercial department into the coming under the football department. we had new sort of, and then wider club, new academy manager. So we'd had an academy manager that had been in post for quite a number of years. So that came, a new academy manager came in, new head of football development and talent management. So the whole structure was sort of changing all at once. So there was a lot of drastic change across the club all at sort of once. So my part of it just was a part of a larger change. So it was part of a wider club evolution, I'd say. But if I think back in my role, yeah, I tried to make a lot of positive change quickly, and on reflection, there'd have been some changes that I'd perhaps made more subtle and taking my time a little bit more. But you're enthusiastic when you come into the new role, and you've got so many different ideas that you want to implement, and perhaps not implementing them all at once would be my reflection.
I think there's sort of a double-edged question that I've got from that is how did you manage then to deal? And I'm not going to say it was chaos, but what I will try and imagine is that you've come in with all this enthusiasm and you've wanted to make positive impacts and drastic changes whilst the club is going through a drastic change. So how quickly did you have to adapt to your new surroundings, your new role? And then probably secondly, off the back of that, how did you then curb that enthusiasm without getting frustrated? Did you have a good support network in terms of people you could bounce ideas off or vent to or
Yeah. So again, at the club, I'd say the support network was really good, and I lent on because I'd only just come from the boys' academy as a coach. Obviously, still had a lot of my colleagues were there that I could bounce ideas off, and they were really, really receptive. My colleagues there were really, really helpful. Amber had got a lot of experience in the women and girls game, so she had loads of experience that I could use and utilize as well. There were moments within it where I did feel like out on a limb myself a little bit, because then once I get to training, there's sort of only me there, and you've got parents, you've got players, you've got coaches, so then I did feel a little bit exposed. But yeah, when I needed support, there was a support network at the club there as well.
I think in a role such as of head of girls academy, there's a lot to be said more about management than there is actual on the grass stuff. How much does people management play a part in your role? And something that I'm really big on at the minute is how do you keep casual staff motivated when there's not necessarily the job security that coaches would probably like? How do you find that?
Um, well, I can empathise because I've been a casual member of staff for good, because that's just the nature of coaching. So I know what it feels like to be in that scenario myself. So I know what being a casual member of staff feels like. I've been really fortunate. So I recruited a number of coaches when I first came in. So I wanted to bring in some experienced coaches. So that again, I want to just stress that the people that were doing sort of they were running Forest Girls as a sort of grassroots club had put in hundreds and hundreds of volunteer hours and done a brilliant job to keep it going. So I don't want to sound anything this derogatory of what had gone before me, because it was a completely different club and completely different setup. But I needed to bring in some people that had got experience in the professional game. So I brought in coaches that were there to improve the standard of the players, but also as I could use to improve the standard of the other coaches, so they could work alongside those more experienced, more qualified coaches. The one thing that was a really pleasant surprise when I came in was how receptive. So those coaches that had been there as volunteers previous to me coming, how much they wanted to still be a part of it, how much they bought into the vision of what it was going to be, and they wanted to develop themselves, and they had a real passion for developing the players as well. So that was really a pleasant surprise to come into, and to sort of help them, support them on their sort of coaching development journey to now attain qualifications, and now all be in a paid role, in casual paid role, has been great. So they've sort of we've made it almost like a commitment to each other with that. Sort of nothing obviously written or contractual, but we have this sort of that relationship between us because we've sort of developed together. Now, within saying that, coaches still have got to perform because ultimately you need the best coaches to create the best players. And part of my role is helping their continued development and being a sounding board for them when they need it as well, to give them the support they might need when they've delivered sessions and need advice on the sessions or advice prior to sessions. So keeping the staff. And the other thing, sorry, I'm flitting around with my answer here, but the other thing, just to like I said, it was important for the players to feel like part of the club. What was also really important to me and what we've done is ensure that those coaches feel a part of the club as well. Yeah. So any staff CPDs they've been a part of, they were never part of them before. So they've been involved in all of the staff CPDs. Any coaches meetings that we've had are at the City ground, so just everything we can do to make them feel a part of the club as a casual member of staff was really important.
How important do you feel it is that for you to be in this management role now, to have been a casual worker and probably had the stresses and the frustrations of maybe being labelled casual? Because I'm speaking from experience here. When you try and speak openly, I think, as a coach, and you were being told, "Oh, you're just a casual member of staff," that can really demotivate them. How important is it then that you've had that experience?
Yeah, well, I've been there. I've been at clubs, and I'm not going to mention any names, but I've been where I've been a casual academy member of staff where you don't get invited to the Christmas do because you're casual. You don't get tickets to the senior men's game because you're a casual member of staff. So you are, yeah, I don't want to say treated badly because that's just, some do it better than others. But there'll be people out there that haven't been casual members of staff that will manage casual members of staff really well. But for me personally, to have been there, been a casual member of staff, and to know what it feels like if you don't feel a part of the club, helps shape how I interact with our coaches. Yeah, definitely.
I think that's brilliant. Again, and I'm speaking for experiences, the little things like having the same clothing, the same kit and equipment, and being part of the club and invited to events rather than sort of cast aside. And I know that's not every club, but I think it's brilliant that you've had that experience to understand and be empathetic. And I think in terms of being a good leader and a good manager, that is one of the key traits. One of the other questions I've got is, how have you found managing up as well as managing sort of sideways and I'm not going to say down, but those that work underneath you as such?
Yeah, again, it's because I've always had to manage it. So this is my first 40 whatever years old I am. It's my first real managerial role. I've never sought any managerial role. It's never been something that I've looked to do. I've always just enjoyed and loved coaching and being a part of football. So managerial has never been something that I've actively sought to do. So I've never wanted to be a manager. So I've been used to all my career sort of managing upwards. So I'm probably better at managing upwards than I am managing. And like you say, I don't like using the term downwards, but managing sort of line managing staff that sort of reporting to me. So I find that I probably find that easier than because I don't find it comfortable giving. I'm getting better at it, and as more experience you get in the role, you get better at it. But I'm not very dictatorial. I'm not saying that's a good trait. Don't get me wrong, but there are times where you need to be perhaps a little bit more command on what you want, etc. And the managing up, I've got a really good relationship with both the head of women and girls, and then the head of football development as well, further up the sort of the dotted line as well. I think just the thing with those is make sure you have a good relationship. You show your. I think the one thing that I always try and do when I'm managing up as well is be authentic.
Brilliant.
So I've never tried to portray something in front of them that I'm not, and then I'm always honest about any gaps in my knowledge. So I'll never try. And with people, like I say, with my direct line manager Amber, and then above her the head of football development. These people have been in top roles at some top clubs, so you can't bluff them. You can't try and pull the wool over their eyes. So if there are holes in my knowledge, then I'll be honest with it. And the great thing is of having people above is that have been in those positions, they've got some great experiences and great knowledge they can share with you as well. So yeah, I'd probably say I find it sometimes easier managing up than elsewhere.
It's really interesting. And one thing I've always been very conscious of when I have been in the female game is being a male. I just want to share something that was sort of brought to my attention in a club visit at Brighton. Um, their belief in the women's game is incredible, and the support for that. And I didn't realize something as simple as when at my previous club, when the women and the ladies are getting changed, um, being in a changing room that is mainly male predominant, so there's only one cubicle for maybe 20
Mm,
female athletes. And I never thought of that because I'm a male.
mm,
Now, obviously, then I had that conversation with the players, and that was a frustrating thing that they would then have to go off and go and find another cubicle in different changing rooms because trying to get like 18, 19 people who want to go to the toilet, it's hard when just having one cubicle.
mm.
Is that something that you are sort of mindful and aware of being a male in the female game?
So again, experiences um, and relationships really help with this. So I'll try and get knowledge from. So I've been involved in the female game in other capacities. So I was the chair of a female grassroots club for a number of years as well,
Right.
um, voluntarily, and so I've sort of that gave me a really good understanding of the female game. So I've had lots of sort of because that will again we probably had more than across I don't know 17 teams, so we probably had about 250 girls within that. So you do a lot of learning as that goes along. So a lot of things about the nuances and some of the things I've learned from that I introduced into the girls. So we did little things like so one of the major things that I'll say, and this wasn't of my doing, this was something of the club were wanting to do anyway, but became a big thing was things like red shorts.
Mhm.
So when I first came in, Forest women played in white shorts, and we had an issue early on where I thought I'd done all the you think you put everything in place. So we did when I came in, we put sanitary products in the first aid packs. So every first aid bag told the players they're in there, use them, don't have to tell us, we'll replan it. Don't come and say we've got this and I've taken that. So try and take any embarrassment away from it. Put them all in the first aid bags, and actually sort of think problem solved. Then you play a game where they're playing in white shorts, when the players unfortunately bled on a pair of shorts, and you are 200 yards away from the changing rooms, and they've got to walk with their. So some of these little things that unfortunately happen that make you like I say those things that happen in the female game that don't happen in the male game. Yeah, that's and then from then on in, we then it helped because the red shorts started to come in. We also spoke with the coaches about we came up with a little sort of policy of how we deal with that in the future, and we put additional shorts in the bags, etc. So yeah, there's things that happen within the female game that you have to be conscious of. But when it comes to them as players, rightly or wrongly, I just think of them as players.
Mhm.
I don't think of them as female or girls or whatever else. They to me they are players. Like I say, there's those considerations that we have to put in place, and that's right to do. So things around sanitary products, etc. But when it comes to them as players, I do just, like I say, rightly or wrongly, I just think of them as players.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's something that I've always been very conscious of, and not pandering or going over the top, just trying to, as you say, treat them as footballers, regardless of sex.
And I found that working with both male and female youth players, there's not a lot of difference between, you wouldn't say one are more, I don't know, emotional than the other, or one are less resilient than the others, or they're all individuals. So whether you talk about the boys or girls, they're just individuals. So you have to treat them as such.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the crux of all player development, if I was to speak honestly, is treating each person as the individual and their needs.
Absolutely.
And rather than a one sort of blanket sort of approach. You've touched on a few times, and rightly so, that obviously you've coached in the boys' game and the female game as well. Obviously, you don't just fall into a role as head of girls' academy. Talk to us about your coaching career. Was there a certain age where you decided, right, I've got a real passion for this, or I want to try my hand at it? Was there a light bulb moment where you were you playing, or were you just a case of, "Oh, this is what I want to be, and I'm going to go after it"?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. When it comes to that, it was not a career that I'd thought of, to be honest with you. So my first, and this is going to age me a little bit, but my first coaching role was in 1996. And as a teenager, had no passion for it, had no desire to do it, etc. And eventually came out of it fairly soon and got, quote unquote, a normal job. So then then it wasn't until about 10 years later when my daughter showed an interest in playing. So took her along to a club, and as very often happens, you catch the wrong person in the eye at the wrong time, and they say, "Look, we're now starting the under eights, under nines, whatever she was. They'll need a coach," and you sort of begrudgingly do it, and did my level one. Then got the bug for it, and then it was like I wanted to get the next qualification. Then it was so then I got another paid role, so I'd gone sort of 10 roles in between paid roles. So then got a paid role with Not So Fay in their player development centres, and then get you. So it sort of from that, and if probably if I hadn't had my daughter and she hadn't had an interest in football, there's a good chance that your podcast might be with Dave Long, the window cleaner. I don't know, or where it's. I don't know where it would have taken me, because I didn't have enough passion from that. Like I say, from my experience early on, I didn't then have enough passion in it. I think I think the older me and my other experiences made me more passionate about it. That's for sure.
A sort of ad hoc question here, and I will apologise for how deep and probably how much it'll put you on the spot. Is how much responsibility do you feel now? And this is a question that I ask myself a lot. Having a daughter and working in the female game to ensure that you are doing the right things and progressing the game, and also at the double edges. How much pressure did you feel being your daughter's coach?
That's. I mean, this is obviously different. The difference between professional coach and when I was coaching my daughter's team as a dad who just, like I say, picked up a whistle and a tracksuit that didn't fit me, and went out for that first session. Just chalk and cheese. Now I made if you've got people that are listening that are doing this, the mistake. I always feel it's really hard to get the balance. You're either one of two things with your own kids. You're either like me, where your daughter's or your child's experience is probably very different to other kids. So I'd like to think that the kids that I coached in that team would look back on that period very fondly. I don't know if my daughter would, because she's got to be training half hour before everybody else. She's helping me carry the stuff from the car. I speak to her in a way during training I wouldn't speak to any other player. It comes to a match day. She's arriving for a match day an hour before all the other kids, because she's got to help me put nets up and get the equipment out. And then if I the goalkeeper hasn't turned up, so she goes in goal because it's easy to ask her than somebody else. I substitute her more because I'm conscious of what other parents think. It comes to the end of the season awards, she don't win anything because I'm conscious of what other parents think. But I think you either do that or you're the parent that your kid is captain, penalty taker on free kicks, and comes home from the awards night with their trophies in a wheelbarrow. You know what I mean? It's either one of the two things. So I've then got two sons afterwards, and I like to think that their experience would be very different. But yes, that was, if I reflect back, it's with a grimace and with me toes curling a little bit as to how managing my daughter. I think I managed the team really well for the experience I had at the time, and then, as I say, as a stepping stone for what I did later on. But yeah, for how I managed my own child, yeah, I don't look back on that with much pride.
I just want to say, Dave, on that, thank you for being so authentic with that. And I think that takes a lot of self-reflection to say that, toes curled and a bit of a grimace, how you felt with that. I think a lot of the people that may listen to this are in a situation where, again, your pathway of you got into coaching because your child wanted to and you needed to do it to ensure that people had a team to play in. What advice would you give to those who are now either one of those parents you mentioned and trying to find the balance between them? Is there any real gold dust that you would offer out?
Like I say, treat them with equity, as you would do the other players in the team wherever possible, and also just be mindful of your conversations in the car on your way there and on your way home, so that that doesn't negatively affect their experience as well, because that can be a really powerful time that you're in the car with them. So yeah, I think it goes wider to parents in general as to what those journeys look like can really influence the players' enjoyment of the game. To be honest with you.
I think that's really powerful what you've mentioned there in terms of the conversations in the car. How easy or would it be and how damaging could it also be for a parent maybe having a conversation in the car and discussing other players and how could that impact your child's relationship with players within the team?
Yeah, it's when I used to do the old level ones once upon a time, there was some, and they were really good. And this is a shame that we've lost the old level one. There was some sort of suggested. We used to give out suggested questions for coaches to give to parents in the car, and sort of roundabout, um, just more positive ones that go away from this notion that winning equals enjoyment and losing equals disappointment or unhappiness or whatever else. Because I don't know about you as a player, Martin, but if I had a bad game and we won, I didn't enjoy it.
Mhm.
If I'd had a good game and we'd lost, I enjoyed it. If I had a good game and we won, then double bubble. I was, really happy. But my enjoyment of the game wasn't dictated by the result. Sometimes it'd be a little bit of disappointment or whatever else. So don't assume that your child has that it's life or death for them. And generally, this is generally there will be kids out there that do it. It's only adults that check league tables and scores and results and whatever else, because the kids that it's their leisure time. They want to be there with the mates. Kids want to win the game. Kids are competitive. They all want to win those games, and that's not a bad thing. And I'm not saying we should live in a world where it's all non-competitive, etc., etc. But as a parent, as a coach, I think you've got a real responsibility to ensure that the environment that is created is conducive with them developing and also their enjoyment.
Mate, I could probably do another episode just on that answer alone. It's hugely at the forefront of people's minds now that to be a good coach, I would say, is based on your results, not who or how you develop and what environments you create. And I think a lot of, listen, I'm just speaking open and honestly now. I think a lot of society now is a case of look what we're doing, we're winning this, we're doing that. My child is doing this and this. How much pressure do you feel is being put onto players at the minute?
Huge. To me, and this is only I'm only seeing from what I see from the outside, and this is not empirical evidence. This is just conjecture I see, but there seems to be a growing sort of push for parents to get their kids into academies or pre-academies or and by sort of any means they can, and yeah, there seems to be very yeah, I don't want to use the term pushy parents, but I'd see some because I'm out as well as working professionally. I'm still in the grassroots game with my kids and what I do as a coach developer and bits and pieces. So yeah, I see some behaviours that I think just relax a bit would be my advice. I don't know. The only way I can sort of sum it up. Yeah. Just relax.
Enjoy the game.
Let them enjoy the game. Yeah, please. Yeah.
I've I've got a few things dotted down, and I may go back and forth with this. You mentioned there, obviously started the pathway like most coaches of volunteering in your child's team, and then ended up going into Notts FA's development centre. What was your pathway from there then, and how did you? I'll come on to this very shortly, but how did you sort of manage your enthusiasm to get the next qualification, the next job, the next role?
Um, Once I had, like I say, once I had the level one, I wanted the next qualification. Once I had the level two, I wanted the B license. Once I had the B license, I wanted the A license. Now I've got the A license, you know, finance or wherever it might be. You think, and you've got to get on it. And so if you think, well, pro license or talent ID level three, or you want to. I've got this. I never went to university. I've got I think 6 GCSEs to my name as a qualifications. That's what I've got. I've got no university education. No, I got no desire for knowledge whatsoever. No for higher education, further education. But I am obsessed with coaching, and I can't get enough learning and knowledge about it from whatever that source that comes from. So I sort of from doing that level one wanted the next ones all the way through. So that's sort of where that happened, and it sort of became there's been so many sort of casual roles in between that it's hard to piece them all together. But from doing sort of the regional player development centres, that then went into working for Nottingham City of Football as well. So I worked for them when Nottingham's a city of football. So like they have the city of culture and city of literature, I think, or whatever they have. They had Nottingham City of Football for 2 years, and that gave me work on some really good projects and helped me hone my skills as a coach. Worked in sports development, worked in university football with Trent, and we'll probably come into that at some point because that was a massive part of my coaching development journey. In academy football with Sheffield Wednesday, talent reporter on the England. So the sort of one job then sort of opened the gate to another one, and then a qualification would open the door to potentially getting another one. So, and don't get me wrong, there's been plenty of jobs that I didn't get that I've gone for. So it's not been all, I haven't been hasn't been just a smooth trajectory. So same as players, your development as a coach is not linear, so it doesn't just all go in one direction for the whole time. There's lots of ups and downs along the way as well. But there's been sort of a lot of different coaching roles in a lot of different environments and with a lot of different players that have then helped alongside the formal learning, but have helped me develop as a coach.
I think just to, obviously you mentioned now you're a licensed coach. From doing your level one to achieving the A license, how long was that time frame?
It was a long time. So you're talking probably 15 years. Is it as much as that? I can't remember. So something like, perhaps 12 years, something like that, perhaps something like that. So it was a long time. There was also, remember as well, once upon a time, there was the youth awards in that as well. So so I had a period of 12 years where I was probably doing at least a course a year.
Wow.
because I did the youth awards within that as well.
I think a couple of things that I've jotted down for those listening will have heard that you started coaching your daughter's team, then got the bug. What pressures come with chasing a career in coaching whilst having a young family? And is there any daunting or any conversations you had to have out with as a family to go, this is what I want to do, and then the financial restraints? Because let's be honest and be quite brutal on it. When you first start out on coaching, paid roles don't come very often. So how did you sort of deal with any pressures of that, chasing a career that you're clearly so passionate about?
Which it's really difficult. And again, think about when I've been doing my coach development, I try and, you get a lot of people coming on their courses. So when I'm taking what used to be the level ones or now the C license or whatever it might be, and you've got people that actually want to do it as a profession going forward, like to then start doing the profession, which I would really encourage, as long as you don't get too good and take my job, but I'd really encourage that. But I'd try and be realistic with them and say, look, there aren't many full-time in the day roles in football. There's very, very few. So it'll all be evenings, it'll be weekends, it'll be sessional pay, it will be casual contracts. So if you want to get a mortgage or a loan or whatever else, that can be difficult. I've had to pay for all of my qualifications. So I didn't, I've had no funding for any of mine. So that's meant I've sacrificed, we've sacrificed family holidays because I've done courses, which is, that takes a lot of support from the people around you. And then, that's, you then think about from your kids, because they've missed out on what would have been family holidays or whatever else, and etc. So yeah, there's a lot of sort of sacrifice and support that has to be around your desire to want to do it. Yeah, which is essential. Yeah.
I think we've probably touched on like the really good stuff in terms of you've got roles, and you mentioned then like talent ID, coach development, which I'll come on to very shortly. Is how have you within that? I'm absolutely sure that there's been some form of rejection, whether that's been course application, job application. What was it, Dave, that kept you going and kept applying, and just those knockbacks? How did you deal with that?
I just really wanted it. I just really wanted I wanted um yeah, I really enjoyed the variety. So one of the drawbacks of having a number of roles is that you've got a number of roles, and we might come to this later on, that it's difficult time management and all the rest of it. But I loved the variety. I absolutely loved the variety of the different roles. And I wanted to those I was definite that I wanted a career in coaching, and that just kept me. So if I got rejected, or even most of the time you don't even get a notification back, you send in an application, you don't hear anything back. So that didn't stop me. So just go for the next one. Then eventually, bang, something drops, and great. And then when you've got that role, it gives you credibility for when you go for another role. So you've got something else you can add on to your CV. And this is again going back to your original point of coaches. You're not going to get paid roles to start off with. So you might have to build your CV. You might have to do a number of different voluntary roles to A, build up your knowledge base as a coach, but B, also give your CV, because nobody's going to, no matter what your qualification is, nobody without actually having done the role, nobody's going to give you a paid role.
And I think that can be frustrating because coaching as a profession has absolutely boomed. There's becoming more roles and more demand for professional coaching. I think the one thing that I want to try and touch on, obviously, with yourself and your experience, is it's almost the same time every year I see the same names saying fourth year not been successful, fifth year not been successful, and like, is there a point? Listen, I was very fortunate that I got on my A license probably at the third attempt, but there's going to be people out there who've tried different, national FAs, governing bodies to try and get on, and are not getting that opportunity. What would you say to those, and what advice would you give to that?
Well, funny enough, it's advice that I'm having to give at the minute to a number of coaches that I won't obviously name or where they're at, etc., that are trying to get on the A license.
Yeah.
Struggling through the FA, struggling through other bodies, are engaging with as many. So the FA do have some programs out there for like aspiring A license coaches, but they've engaged with all of those and stuff, and still not getting thrown to the course. And it is hard, if I'm honest. It's because I don't know what you don't know what the criteria is of the governing bodies. So you don't know what their priorities are at that time, or their exact criteria are. So the only advice I can give, and it feels a bit hollow sometimes saying it, is just like to keep going, just keep applying, and it can be soul destroying, it can be really disappointing, but yeah, to just keep persevering, keep engaging with as much as you can, and then just keep coaching and keep building your CV in between as well.
To become a successful coach or successful in gaining a role within football, would you say that these knockbacks, rejections are all part of having the resilience? Because let's be honest, and one of the questions I have got was, how did you deal with the highs and lows of football throughout your career to date?
Yeah, well, this is something where, yeah, it's. I think experience comes with it. So the first time you don't get a job or whatever it might be, I think you get quite low about it.
Mhm.
Then if it's happened a few times, you sort of build up a little bit of resilience to it, and then, like I say, when you get something, you get a high, but then you get a realism of, so I might have got a job, which is great. Now the next thing is, oh right, okay, I've got the job now. Now I've actually got to do it. So it's sort of, you've got to ensure that your highs aren't too. It's easy to say, isn't it? But your highs aren't too high, your lows aren't too low. And I think just the only thing that I found that helps me manage that is just that experience. And I'd say it with coaching, if the coaches listen to this as well, that are doing that are out there actively coaching when it comes to like the highs and lows of coaching sessions. Again, I've delivered loads of sessions where I get back in the car and I think I'm going to burst into tears here, because the session's gone that bad. On the flip side, I've done sessions where I think, that's it, I've completed football now, cracked it, don't ever have to. And it's that sort of highs and lows. It's that, don't get too carried away by the highs and don't get too down with the lows. You're going to experience those as you go along. And now I sort of allow myself, if I'm going to coach, I'll allow myself one bad session in 10. And if I have if I have a bit of a stinker 1 week, I think, yeah, well, that's me 1 in 10.
We're all human, and we're going to make mistakes just for the pure randomness of the game and players, really. I think, how important has it been for you, Dave, that when you've had those highs and you've had those lows and you've had everything in between, your support network, whether that be within the club, within the role, or outside of that in terms of family, has there been, have you had a mentor that you've sort of lent upon?
Um, so it's when I've had those highs and lows, yeah, it can be difficult for those around you. So if you have had a low, and I can't think of a particular instance where I've had a massive low. So I've been fairly fortunate. There's times when you're annoyed and you're a bit cheesed off and whatever else, but nothing where I don't ever take it home to a massive extent. You know what I mean? So yeah, I've got a good partner now, who if I've had a bit of a wobble, she's good at. But I quite like the distraction of when you get, you know what I mean? So I think the normality of home or your relationship or whatever else can sort of help, and try not to bring that. And again, I know it's easy said than done. Try not to bring that into your, take it home with you. Really, I know it can be difficult, but having a good support network is. And look, that's going to look different for different people, isn't it? Like with life in general. So my missus will have a real Mardy, sorry, not Mardy. She'll always be annoyed with me because if I've got an issue, I tend to suppress it and bottle it, and I like to deal with it in my own way. Whereas she'll tell me every single minutiae detail about what problem she's got, and that works for her, and it works for me the other way. So the support network that people have might look different in different ways. One of the really good support networks I've always found when it comes to like coaching is sometimes like your coaching partner. if you're in a club, because they're living the same sort of thing as you are. So sometimes they can be a really good foil for after a session, or if you've not got a job, or whatever it might be. You know, somebody that you're coaching with that understands what you might be going through. I find, you know, your coaching partner becomes your sort of for a season or for how long it might last, is you sort of one of your best mates for that
Yeah.
period, and can be a really good shoulder. I was going to say shoulder to cry on, but somebody to lean on, I think, would be probably better.
Yeah. What the next sort of stage I want to sort of discuss is, and I'm going back to what you said earlier, was you had no interest of coaching, and if you know things would have been different if you hadn't taken your daughter's team on, you might have been Dave the window cleaner rather than the head of girls academy. When did coach development then come into the foray? When did that come into your thought process and go, the experience I've built and got and learned, I really want to go and support others?
Well, this is where talk about sort of resilience, and sometimes how perseverance can help. So I didn't pass my uh, B license at my first go. So did my on the final day, as normally happens, the 28 of you do your final session. Half a dozen actually get the award on the day. So it was back then, it was I assume it is now quite stringent to pass, as it should be. But the guy who was my sort of assessor at the end was brilliant, and he said, "Look, I really like your session. I made a cock up with my starting position, so it's a real small detail, but it affected my session." So he said, "I like your session, blah 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 blah." He says, "Look, I'm going to tell you to go for reassessment immediately." He says, "Because I think you're ready. You just, I'd had a bit of an issue within this session, so I'm really grateful. Yeah, brilliant. So did it straight away, and the county coach developer in Nottinghamshire was the guy that was going to come and reassess me. So within a matter of weeks, he was going to come out and watch me do a session. Did the session, and at the end of it, he said to me, I want you to say this with all humility, Martin, because I don't want to sound like a bit of a wally by saying this, but he was very complimentary of the session that I did, and said to me, "Look, we're going to have some coach developer roles coming up. Would you be interested?" So my session, my reassessment session, was got me the job as a coach developer.
Incredible.
So a little bit of, so that sort of, and if if I'd have passed my B license on that day, there's a good chance I might not have been a coach developer. So it's that sort of that resilient, because I could have come away on that B license day and thought, fuck, I don't want to do that. I don't want to, sulk for a bit about it. But because he sort of said to me, right, go put in for it straight away, I did, and I was really enthusiastic. I say got the county coach developer involved, and then from that, yeah, within 6 months, might have been less, I was coach developing for Notts FA.
What I find really interesting with that is obviously you weren't aware that one, coach developer roles were available.
Nope.
Two, that I'm not going to say rejection, but that setback in terms of your BLIS assessment was actually propelling you to something different. Now, if I suppose there's two ways you could have gone. You could have been extremely low and gone, I'm not going to reassess again. What's the point? I put a bad session up, blah, blah, blah. But the way that you went with it was,
It wasn't that bad, Martin.
oh no. But I'm just, I can imagine they were maybe the thoughts that you had. Because listen, I had the same with my A license, and I know we spoke about this previously that I wasn't successful on the first attempt, and my whole world fell apart. That was it. I thought I can't coach anymore. I've failed an assessment.
Mm.
Again, very similar. It was get your reassessment in, and within a matter of sort of weeks it was. But my point that I want to try and hopefully allude to is that the way you conducted yourself on your reassessment and the way you carried yourself out in terms of your drive, your conduct, the way that you delivered actually led to that opportunity of how you conducted yourself. how important is it to coaches that not your reputation, but the way that you behave and conduct yourself can carry you?
Oh, hugely, hugely. Your standards and your personal standards and behaviours are um, paramount. Yeah, absolutely. And as I say, I I like to think that the way I behaved and interacted with the tutors, with the like I say, the county coach developer at Notts at the time, helped facilitate that, as I say, that move into coach development. Yeah, it was to say so. Coach development sort of happened by chance rather than design, but yeah, probably the way I carried myself after that initial rejection, yes, certainly probably helped me get that role.
And I think now with the importance of not the importance, but the rise in social media is you can probably portray yourself on social media as a certain coach, for example. But I think the real crux would be make sure that you do that on the pitch as well, because one, you never know who's watching, and the world of football is rather small.
Oh yeah, and it's it's really easy to get a poor reputation. And I think it's easier to get a poor reputation as a poorly behaved coach than it is as a poor technical coach, if you're with me.
Okay.
So I don't hear many people say, so if we're talking for whatever reason, people are talking about a coach from another club within academy football, or whatever it might be. I've never heard any coach sort of say, well, he can't coach. That's excuse me, or she can't coach. That doesn't tend to be the conversations, but they will talk about the behaviours of coaches and how they conducted themselves, how they carried themselves, and then that's easily that sort of grows legs and spreads and excuse me can sort of become then their reputation can precede them.
Mhm. I think that's really important. Before we go into our sort of quick fire question, because one, I'm conscious I've taken up your time today. And if I didn't put an end to it, I would talk to you all day about football because
Yeah.
I think the conversation's been incredible and there's so much. I probably need to go and listen to this again and unwrap some stuff and then probably get a part two. Um,
Can you edit out the bit where you called it a bad session as well, Martin? Is that
yeah, yeah. I obviously wasn't in attendance just for I wasn't in attendance at that session, but that might have been a thought process. Um, Obviously, before we do head into the questions, what advice would you give to any aspiring coaches?
Oh, so the one thing I'd say is, and the benefit I've found is to go and get as many different coaching experiences as you can. So I've been over my career, I've coached girls, boys, elite, grassroots, disability, elite disability. I've done the older people when I was with City of Football. I did a project in the city of Nottingham where some of them didn't speak English, wasn't their first language, etc. You go and get as many different. Don't want to go straight into academy football where it all looks great because you'll do your best learning when it's messy, when it's difficult, when it looks when you're having to really work hard. That's when you have to use things like your step principles and stuff. So if I think about when I delivered sessions that were in disability sessions that I used to deliver that were the football sessions, I might have a chair user arrive, I might have somebody who's having to use crutches that day. I might have somebody with a learning disability, but is physically fitter than me. Um, but they might have a learning disability that means that I have to explain the session in a different way. I might have to do it really visually. So go out there and try and get as many different coaching experiences as you can possibly get. They're going to help build your coaching self, for want of a better phrase, that get a sort of a Rolodex that you can refer to, so that when subconsciously, when you're in certain situations, you can manage them because you've experienced it. So, like I say, when I did the sessions with sort of disability, and that's a more extreme example, but it meant that I was forever using the step principle. within sessions. How I'm going to adapt this, because now I've got, like I say, I've got the chair users. So the spaces between the cones are going to have to be bigger. I'm going to have to think about, a different size ball, or we've all got to play the same game, but I've got to think of how I'm going to make it so that everyone gets something out of the session. So it's I think, yeah, as many different coaching experiences you can possibly get.
That's incredible, and I think that's really important because no club, team, player is ever the same.
Well,
Um,
it's even when you then get, so like I say, with the disability stuff, where you've got chair users, where you've got learning disabilities, or whatever it might be, they're quite stark. But then even when you go into, so when I think about when I've been in academy football with elite players, elite boys, you still have to manage difference within that as well. But because I've done it, I'm not perfect at it, but because I've had the experience of where I've had to manage difference on such a vast level, I think that's given me the skill to be able to manage and manipulate sessions so that they can get their returns from it. Delivering the same set. I can't deliver if I've got 15 different players in the session. I can't deliver 15 different sessions. I've got to deliver the same session, but I might have to do things within it that's going to challenge the ones that are really striving, but are going to allow the ones that are struggling to keep up an opportunity to still develop as well within that. And that's even, like I said, that's even with elite players. There will still be differences within that session that have to manage.
I think that's a whole nother episode as well, to be fair, in terms of managing difference. But I'm going to throw you right in at the deep end in this, and I'm going to give him a shout out. I've taken this question from Temisan Williams, a guy I met on the Advanced Youth Award. Define elite football.
Yeah, I suppose for me, I would define it as I suppose the sort of the easy definition, whether it's lazy, is I suppose you'd say um, academy football. What I would say with that is, even within academy football, I've seen behaviours, standards, facilities, etc., that aren't elite. Um, I've then seen places where they've got elite facilities and elite coaches that haven't had elite behaviours. So I think elite is yes, I am talking about, the pathway towards high end professional football, but within that there's also, say, elite cultures, elite behaviours, elite facilities, elite principles, elite excuse me, coaching methodology. So yes, it's not as, for me, it's not as simple as that. Like I say, whether that's right, wrong, indifferent, whether people agree, but that would be my thought of what an elite means.
It's a difficult question, and I purposely left that out because Temi did the same to me, and it threw me. I was then arguing and answering my own questions, and I think that's really important because it has been thrown about a lot.
Mm.
So, but again, that could probably be a different conversation. What's been your best moment in football to date?
So this is, I'll try and make this as concise as I possibly can do, this answer that I'm going to give. But as a coach developer in Nottinghamshire, we held the first level one for coaches with a learning disability. So we did that but the moment that got me with it, so we did it in a school in Newark in Nottinghamshire, and we needed some participants when they were doing some practical. So we're doing the practical. So there was kids that were part of a holiday club in the same complex. So we got some of the kids. The guy that was looking after the kids said, "Look, these are a little bit challenging. They can be a little bit difficult, these kids, but blah 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 blah." So we got them across. Anyway, so they're all in a little group, probably about 12 of them. There were 6 coaches and these 6 kids, and I had to go and get some equipment. So I said to him, "Right, just partner up, and then we'll get started." Fully in the belief that the lads from the holiday club would partner up, and the coaches with the learning disabilities would partner up. And I went and got my stuff out of the bag. As I turned round, they'd all partnered. So the young kids had all partnered with somebody with one of the coaches, high-fiving each other, telling each other what football club they supported, And they like then stood there with their arms like as you would, like with their arm around each other. And proper is one that I'm not the world's hardest man to start off with, but I had to turn back towards my bag because I instantly got like a lump in my throat, and I thought if there's football can be the most divisive sport in the world, but it's very best. It's the most. It can unite people. So these sort of kids and these coaches with learning disabilities, the one thing they all of them had in common was this love of football. And it was just one of them magical moments that yeah, I just very it will stand out. So for all the other things that I've done in football that have been brilliant within sort of coaching, etc., that is just my absolute standout moment.
Yeah, that's incredible. Who's been your toughest opponent as a coach?
If we're talking sort of on the pitch stuff, competing for when winning matters, that was when I was at Trent University, and it'd be Loughborough University, who we would compete with. We were little old Trent, and they were the behemoth that is Loughborough University. Great setup, great people, brilliant players. University football is underrated, and I was myself with this and under. It's not known about, but the standard is on a different level. So in the time that I was at Trent, 3 of those lads now are now playing professionally in the football league. So they've then gone back in. They've gone into the professional game. Loughborough had 1 or 2 that went into the professional game, but yeah, they were probably, when it comes to sort of competing for when winning matters, then yeah, when I was at Trent and against Loughborough, yeah, that was the one.
Who's been the best coach you've worked with?
A guy called, again, going back to Trent, a guy called Tom Shaw, who's now assistant head coach at Lincoln City in League One. He's a very, very good friend of mine now, but his style of coaching, his ability to make it simple but technically in depth, I was always sort of really impressed by his relationship with players and his humility. The guy's had an incredible career, but he's the most humble. If he was sat in the room, you wouldn't know that he was, a head coach in the Football League and had a good playing career and stuff. Yeah, very, very humble with it as well. And it was, I think, one of the things that I learned from him and from others that I've coached with is, it can still be fun as well. You can still enjoy it.
It's interesting. Who's been the biggest role model or influence for you in football?
So I would go back to, if we're talking about, again, people who have shaped. So just going back to that county coach developer at Notts FA. So there's a guy called Chris Dowan, who, as I say, not only gave me the opportunity as coach developer, but again, talking about people that you observe and how they are, how they interact. He shaped a lot of the way I am now. He was a massive influence in a really, really positive way. Yeah, very influential on my career.
Describe yourself in 3 words.
This is always difficult, isn't it? Because the first one I was going to use was authentic, which I think is really important. I can't be something I'm not. So I'm not a baller. I'm not a shouter. I'm not as a coach. You know what I mean? I'm not I'm never going to claim to be the most technical coach in the world or the best coach in the world. So I'm always authentic. I think that, and this is always difficult without sounding that like you're not humble, but humble. There's nothing special about me. You've listened to I've bored you for the last hour or so about my career. So there's nothing special in that. Nothing that sets me apart from anybody else. And then the last one would be hardworking, because if you're going to have a career in football and in coaching, you've got to be hardworking.
Is there anybody you would recommend or like to hear on the podcast?
That, and it'd be interesting. Unfortunately, I've not spoken to him for a couple of few years now. I really must, and this might be the way that we'd ignite it. But so Chris Down, that I spoke about before, has had an amazing career in youth development. He was also first team coach at Bradford City for a while in his career.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the content that we're trying to bring to you. You can find us on the iTunes Store, Spotify, and if you want to see the video, you can see it on our YouTube channel, PCT Football Coaching.